Hello, my name is Orion's Aegis, and today I want to talk about why I'm starting this channel and the sort of content to be expected, and also dive into my favorite subject in the whole world, fantasy. So part 1. Why am I starting this channel? Well, to put it simply, it's because I've got this large head just chock full of all sorts of knowledge about books, films, comics, anime, games, and tabletop roleplay games. And I just really want to share it as well as discuss things with my viewers and friends. To go more in depth, I've been wanting a new hobby for a long time now, and I figured now would probably be a good time to try my hand at a YouTube channel. Why not, right? But for the next year, I'm going to try and upload a video every Saturday between 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I plan to bring up videos about everything I've mentioned so far, as well as go for lore videos, character reviews, and bring up some stellar tabletop roleplay stories. Beyond that, well, I might drop some videos where I just ramble, and I'll definitely slip in nods and links to the YouTubers that I watch that have inspired me in some way. Examples of these kind of YouTubers would be, well, some of the YouTubers that have written books, like Hello Future Me channel, the Shadiversity channel, Unicorn of War, just to name a few that I've talked about writing and also just piqued my interest for other reasons, such as the show Ruby, Medieval Concepts and History, and the show like the Explorer series, which handles a bunch of lore and background information, most especially about the SCP Foundation, which is very fun. But, on to part 2, fantasy. What I like about it and why I'm going to gab about it often. Fantasy, to me, has always been about escapism and the thrill of adventure. To explore worlds, head out on incredible journeys, and witness breathtaking magic. Be it in the form of a book, a film, or just sitting around a table with some friends and a bag of dice. Fantasy has been a huge part of my life since I was young, and I fully intend to keep it in my life till my dying days. Fantasy is also just really fun to experience, not only by yourself, but also amongst friends and other people in general. Watching The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King with my friends and quoting whole scenes, going and reading Harry Potter with my little brother, or sitting down with my lovely girlfriend to watch Stranger Things, are just a few examples of how I enjoy fantasy with other people. You could also enjoy on a very personal level. Enjoy fantasy on a very personal level. Look at that, fucked up. In games like Witcher or Dragon Age, you can get so enamored and devoted to certain characters that they feel to you like real friends and people you genuinely come to care about. Watching a character die can be so heartbreaking, and in my personal opinion, the most emotional death in a fantasy story would have to be Boromir's death in The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. If you don't know, spoilers ahead. Boromir has just broken from the One Ring's pull and has tried desperately to make peace with Frodo. Frodo ran off in fear and probably in a little bit of, get away from this guy. But then Boromir throws himself headlong into a fight against far too many foes. A large company of Uruk-hai that are attempting to kidnap all the halflings and kill the Fellowship of the Ring. Like I said, spoilers. In the end, despite his strength and courage, Boromir dies defending Merry and Pippin, having been saved by his king and given a noble bearing before being laid to rest. This scene always, even to this day, brings me to tears when I watch it or read it, and I truly think it's one of the most well-done character deaths in the fantasy genre. Besides that, this isn't going to be 15 minutes long. It's going to be shorter than I thought, but it's an introduction piece, so it'll be fine. I'll edit this out. Other things I could bring up about the fantasy genre would be those Chosen One stories. I love those kind of stories. Luke Skywalker, Harry Potter, and even, stepping outside of that into the realm of anime. You've got all sorts of Chosen One stories like, well, it's not quite Chosen One, but Naruto kind of fits. Being sort of destined to, from this greater bloodline of power and might that once kept the world together, the Sage of Six Paths. To go from that, from his bearings of being an orphan who's beset by a demon inside of him, and then to go on in life and to become not only the hero of his people, but the hero of the world, defeating all sorts of monsters and bad guys. I love that kind of trope. That's one of my favorite tropes in all fantasy. Harry Potter is also a very big one. Harry Potter being destined to be the one who destroys the Dark Lord Voldemort. That was really cool when I was a kid. And to this day, I still like watching the movies. I don't read the books, but I do like watching the movies. What are some other examples of this trope? Well, you've got Percy Jackson. Percy Jackson and the Olympians, especially the later half of the Percy Jackson series, really handles this with the destiny of the Seven. 7 characters, I don't remember all their names, but 7 characters are destined to help the gods defeat the newly arisen giants. And the gods cannot defeat them on their own, they need the help of the demigods. So 7 demigod heroes are destined to help them. What are other tropes we could talk about with fantasy, besides the destined one, besides just, character deaths and stuff like that? Well, you've got the mentor trope. Your Obi-Wans, your Uncle Irohs, your Dumbledores, that go about and they try to teach the character a lesson, basically. For Iroh, it was teaching Zuko basically how to not be such an asshole. For Dumbledore, it was kind of leading Harry to slaughter, but he did also teach him, restraint with anger, and to have love for your friends, and even at times love for your enemy as well. And those are good things to teach. But, what are other things we could talk about? This is my first video, so I apologize if this is garbage, but we're going to have fun with it best I can. What else could we talk about when it comes to fantasy? Well, we could talk about video games. Like I said, I mentioned Dragon Age, I mentioned The Witcher. In Dragon Age especially, which has a huge influence on me when I've been writing up my own world, on my own fantasy world, Dragon Age was a huge influence to me with how it really brings in the culture of the world and how people and races will treat each other. Like, for instance, in Dragon Age, elves are basically scum. They are the scum of the earth in regards to how humans normally treat them. And there are some humans who are nice to them, but most of them are not. Most humans treat them like dirt, and even some human countries basically use them as slaves. But there are also elves who live traditionally and live in the wilds, known as the Dalish, and they are one of the most fun aspects of the Dragon Age lore, and also my favorite kind of elf to play when I play those games. I love the rebellious elf. It's a thing. But my last thing I'll get to before I end this video is going to be tabletop roleplay type of fantasy scenarios. Your D&D, your Pathfinder, stuff like that. And even your homebrew D20s where you're just rolling the dice and seeing what happens. It's all just randomly happening to you. That kind of stuff is super, super fun. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but it is. When you're going into a story and your players, as a GM, a game master, your players go into this town that's devoid of people and rotted, and there's this eerie silence just, besieging the town of everything. Your players will come to realize, come to figure out the story and the plot to everything, and maybe it's a necromancer turning everyone undead, or a demon lord trying to amass souls for his vile army. Or maybe it's righteous hero who's kind of fallen on the wayside, and he's not as good as he should be. He's not the hero. He's more of an anti-hero, or even outright has become a villain. Those kind of things are always fun to do, and fun to experience even more than normal aspects of fantasy, because you get to experience it with loads of people at once. It's a beautiful experience. Everyone gets involved, everyone has fun. And when it comes to fantasy, I feel like that's the greatest thing you can have, is having fun with it. Having fun with the experiences of Harry Potter in the Wizarding World, or Aragorn and the Fellowship of the Ring in the Middle Earth, or Zuko and Aang and Katara and Sokka and Toph in the Last Airbender. These are all examples of great fantasy stories and great fantasy worlds with just that are so beautifully built and constructed, and characters you can become so close to that, like I said earlier, they're basically friends to you in a way. But I've gone off on a bit of a ramble. Probably going to expect a lot of those, so I apologize. I'll cut back down to it. So getting back to what I've been talking about, getting back to fantasy and getting out of my ramble and finishing off this video. I really just want this to go out to anyone who's watching it and anyone who's listening to it while at work or just listening to it for fun to see what it's about. Please enjoy it, because that's ultimately what I want this to be for, is for enjoyment. So please, if you've enjoyed this, like, subscribe, that whole jazz you hear from every other YouTube channel. And that's all the time I got for this video, so please, have a good night and farewell to you wonderful people. And as a final note, let me know about a scene from a fantasy game, show, or otherwise that left you with an emotional connection. What was it? Leave it in the comments down below. Love you all.